Hi, I'm Megan. Welcome to today's live reading of Bifrost by T.S. Simons, presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Join me. Chapter 1. Illy pushed her chair away from the table with a contented sigh and rested her hands on a perpetually flat stomach. That was sensational. I don't remember when I had last had a meal that good. Gio rose, accidentally knocking me with his elbow. He always looked awkward, his 6-foot height wedged under our tiny table. He added Illy's empty bowl to the stack he was juggling. As he moved toward the kitchen, I caught his reflection in the window, his face beaming almost as bright as the moon's reflection across the ocean outside. Aside from aiding people in his medical career, which continued to fill him with joy, cooking was his passion. Gio adored preparing meals for family and friends, experimenting with traditional Italian cuisine, the recipes adapted to the foods we grew here. While eating, he would hound us about what we liked and what needed to be improved. Fennel was his new favorite flavor, something my father had introduced him to, and he added it to everything. I don't think I can move, Illy groaned, her head rolling back in exaggerated discomfort and pushing her chair 3 inches from the table as far as she could before the wooden backrest hit the wall. Well, you don't have far to stagger. Best get moving. Jealousy rose in me as I watched her pretend to be bloated, and I instantly regretted my cheeky comment. Sometimes I spoke without thinking, but Ellie knew me well enough to know I wasn't trying to be rude. Exhaustion made me cranky. As much as we loved the company and the conversation, which was always entertaining and usually ended in hysterical laughter, I did not want them to stay all night. A hot shower and bed were what I desperately needed. Ellie didn't appear to have taken offense as she sighed again and took a dainty sip from her wine glass. I grappled with the urge to snatch it from her tiny hand and knock it back in one gulp. We have something we want to discuss before we leave. I thought you said leaving work in the office was important, I fired back, seeing my early night fly out the window. Illy peered over her small, black-rimmed glasses, eyebrows raised at my sharp tone. Her smirk transformed into something a little more mischievous as she observed my frustration simmering. This involves both of you, or I would have already discussed it with you. Matching her smug expression and ignoring her parental tone, I lifted my chin and made complete eye contact, indicating that she did not intimidate me and that she should continue. We have a proposal for you. My cheeky grin morphed into a grimace as I stretched awkwardly in my chair, silently pleading for Gio to return from the kitchen. My back was killing me now that I was the size of an elephant. Well, what I imagined an elephant would look like. Like everyone born in the last 30 years, I'd only ever seen pictures, although Mom had told me there was a dedicated breeding facility for animals in England to ensure no species became extinct. She had visited before I was born when she was still a veterinarian, a lifetime ago. What? I tried not to let the suspicion infuse my words, but I couldn't help it. Growing up with her, I knew Illyria better than anyone, plotting, scheming, or simply running a million scenarios through her head to assess the best outcome. Illy got her way. Every single time. Illy twinkled at me. It involves all of us. My shoulders slumped and my head rolled forward, too heavy for my neck. Of course it does. The master manipulator strikes again. Glancing around the table, I evaluated the assembled party. Illy glowed, her blue eyes brilliant and sparkling, betraying her wit and intelligence. She looked like she had pulled off a monumental coup before speaking a word. Towering beside Illy's elegant bird-like form, Carmelo beamed at me, little crinkles appearing next to his warm brown eyes. But then again, he was perpetually happy. Carmelo was much like my father, always willing to help anyone, no matter how inconvenient it may be to himself. A bear of a man, he was more than twice her size, yet we all knew she was in charge. Carmelo was full of light. It was almost like his heart was so full of love that it overflowed and infected everyone in his world. They gazed at each other, and my stomach dropped further, knowing we were being set up. Clouds of suspicion darkened Gio's chiseled face as he took 4 strides across the room, his brow furrowed. He dropped into the chair beside me, facing Illy and Carmelo. The pile of dishes could sit in the sink for now. What? Gio echoed my question as his hand slipped onto my thigh, giving me a gentle, reassuring squeeze under the table. If we both objected, perhaps we had a chance not to be railroaded into another of her grand schemes, the last of which had ended us up here. Please, please don't relocate us now. Gio's rigid posture beside me belied his similar concerns. Neither of us trusted Illy's grandiose plans, which she had a habit of dropping on us as a fait accompli. Illy peered over her glasses at Carmelo, obtaining his final consent. With an infinitesimal flick of the eyelids, she turned back across the table to us. Making full use of her flair for the dramatic, she took a deep breath, pushed her glasses back onto her nose, and paused. My heart sank further. Promise me you'll let me finish. I will explain the offer and our reasoning, but let me speak first. Gio's eyes met mine, and his fingers squeezed my thigh again. We had both endured a lifetime's experience of Illy's proposals by now. Even after all these months of working together in the shared role of chief, occasionally Illy still surprised me with the creativity of her schemes. That woman always achieved her goal. Speak, I warned, a touch gruffly. Illy had a knack for grating my cheese, always knowing how to irritate me to the maximum effect. Besides, it was late, and I was exhausted. Watching the three of them savoring a delicious-smelling wine over dinner was the final straw. Carmelo and I were wondering how you would feel about sharing both the role of chief and parenting of your babies. Illy paused and watched my eyes spring wide before holding a hand up, hurrying to explain. Gio's fingertips pressed slightly more firmly into my leg, but I couldn't tell if he was annoyed or warning me to listen. Settling back into my chair, I squirmed to get comfortable, the wooden slats pressing firmly into my back, the table into my massive midriff. I've had twins. They are a ridiculous amount of work in the early months. The first year or two, to be honest. One gets sick, they both do. They feed off of each other, so if one cries, the other does. There is an endless stream of nappy changes and feeds. One wakes in the night, wait and wakes the other one. Frankly, you need to be an octopus. You feel like you never have enough hands. So what we're proposing is this. Carmelo will act as your nanny, although he would like to be known as Nano, if you don't mind. He can help care for the babies and bring them to you. Caitlin for feeding. He will assist you when you need another set of hands, even if it is just preparing meals and helping with the laundry. Then you and I will continue to be joint chief just for a year or so until you are ready to take over entirely and I can retire. But this allows us both to work part-time and share the load. Your mother has already told you she wants you to deliver the babies on Lewis, where she and the other doctors can supervise and where we can collect the cord blood discreetly. We all agree that having them there is best, but we need to make some decisions soon. You can take time off for the birth and the months immediately after. I can do all the traveling for the first 6 to 8 months, or at least until you are ready to leave the babies or take them with you. Carmelo would stay with you and support you. You can still chair meetings from here or wherever else you choose. Take some time to think about it, but I think it is a win-win. Illy leaned back in her chair, observing my face. Illy's negotiation tactics were familiar to me by now, and I noted several key elements. It was clever of her to claim Gio was supportive of where I had the babies, but I was experienced enough in the art of negotiations to know that he had no knowledge of the rest of the proposal. Squinting at her, I was immensely suspicious of the seemingly generous offer. There must be a catch. With Illy, there was always a catch. While these would be our first children, I had been around enough babies to know that she was telling the truth. Babies were ridiculously hard work. Ask any parent how they felt, and tired was always the response. Illy had raised 4 children, 2 of them without a partner. She had done far more than her fair share, and no one would blame her for skipping off into the sunset with Carmelo, leaving all that behind. On the surface, it was a fantastic offer. 4 adults to 2 babies would undoubtedly make life a whole lot easier. She was still watching me closely, waiting for a response. Are you sure? We are positive. As you know, Carmelo never experienced the joy of his own children and desperately wants to be actively involved. He is your biological uncle and Gio's godfather, so he wants to be in the everyday lives of these children and more than just the occasional visit. Think of us as sparents, spare parents. But that means us living wherever you do. After much soul searching and discussion, I'm not quite ready to stop working. I can't see myself spending my days gardening or knitting, and this arrangement allows me to bow out slowly, hand the reins to you, and you can take on more responsibility as you feel ready for it. Are you sure you still want me for this role? I mean, you have time to train someone else. Ricardo, Nymphy, Seraphine even. I feel like I'm letting you down. You've spent all this time training me, and now I'm walking away. No, you aren't walking away. You are pregnant. There's a difference. We all have families, so we understand. I want you and the other ambassadors do too. Not one of your colleagues doubts you are the best choice. We will wait as long as necessarily. But really, Ricardo is not you. He is great at advocating for the Piedmont team, but he doesn't have your sense of collegiality and high-level strategic vision. You know how to listen to all perspectives and make tough decisions, even when it makes some people unhappy. Ricardo actively avoids conflict. He wants to keep the peace. A chief can't always do that. He who shouts the loudest can't always win. That phrase made me smile. Illy regularly said that when a single interest group started getting very vocal about a particular topic. What about Illy knew where this was going and cut me off. Caitlin, they want you. The ACC will wait until you're ready. As I have said before, you can perform this role from wherever you like. Long gone are the days when women with children can't hold down leadership roles. We will make it work, I assure you. What about me? Geo interrupted. Where do I fit into this schema of yours? Illy grinned broadly at his use of the word scheme, although I noted she hadn't really given us much opportunity to refuse. We thought this plan gives you as much flexibility as possible. You can take time off when the babies are born or later, anytime you choose, knowing that Carmelo is here to support you both. Me too, of course, although I could sometimes be away. The medical team needs you, Giovanni. With additional help at home, you can always also work part-time if you wish, or take the time to pursue further training. Geo nodded gravely. Illy had read the tea leaves well. It was no secret that Geo desperately wanted to be a hands-on parent, having lost so many years with his parents. But he also felt the pressure of contributing to the medical community. After training with my mother, aunt, sister, and Georgia, as well as with Magali and Nasir, he was one of the best generalists in any above-ground or underwater communities. People trusted him and heavily relied on his expertise, regularly consulting him on a wide variety of cases. His techniques were excellent, and he always made decisions in the patient's best interest, coming up with innovative treatment plans that many would never have considered. Almost weekly, another community contacted us seeking medical advice, and they always sought Geo's opinion, although I noticed he diplomatically included his colleagues in discussions and proposing a course of treatment. He and Sorcha were renowned as the best general surgeons, but his dream was to specialize in pediatrics. Nasir was the best person to train him, and we had spoken at length about taking a placement in France when we could. While he had never stated it out loud, Nasir couldn't be too far from wanting to retire and spend time with his grandchildren. After supporting Gianni and Charlie, Gio desperately wanted to work with children and make a difference in their lives. We need to talk about it, so we are not making any promises tonight, I warned as I glanced at Gio, and his hand relaxed on my leg. But on the surface, it appears to be an idea worth considering. Does this mean you would live here? Assuming you choose to stay here, it does, but we would follow you anywhere. The Canadians are not ready to let you go either. We need to shuffle living arrangements so that we are next door. You need a larger place. We don't. But if we stay here, we thought we might take this apartment and you can take the larger one next door. Illy gestured to the apartment to our right. That one is 2 bedrooms. We can install an intercom. That way you can buzz us if you need us, even overnight. You've thought this through. I didn't mean to sound suspicious, but was unable to disguise the tone as the words trickled from my mouth. Would you expect me to present you a half-baked plan? She fired back with a grin. Do you know me at all, Caitlin Clara McIntosh Ricardo? I knew her extremely well, and that was precisely the problem. She had been in my life since the day I was born, and I had ample experience of Illyria's plotting. She had conjured up this plan, likely over weeks, bullied Carmelo to agree, worked out all the reasons we might say no, and had already counteracted them. In short, Illy was not a woman who took no for an answer. The rebel streak in me desperately wanted to say no, they are our children, and we can do this ourselves. But the truth was, it was a wonderful offer, and I recognized it as such. Maybe I had matured, not letting my stubbornness prevent me from taking up a potentially beneficial opportunity. What about Sarah? I asked softly as I stroked my burgeoning belly, one of my inhabitants flip-flopping as they often did after I had eaten. Sarah had one child, little Radion. He was already a year old, but I knew from speaking with her daily that Ray was her world. She gushed about his achievements and milestones, first steps, words, and smiles. I suspected it wouldn't be long before she wanted another. Unlike me, who felt enormous and as ungainly as a chunky baby hippo, Sarah loved being pregnant. Tall and slender, like our mother Freya, she was willowy and graceful and hadn't even looked pregnant until she stood side on. I have thought of that, and I will speak with her, explain the situation. But I wanted to raise it with you first. You know she gets a lot of help in Japan. They have a wonderful setup, and their nursery facilities are exceptional. Children are the focus of their community, high valued, and they receive wonderful care and education. Besides, twins are more than twice the work of a single Bubba. Seraphine has no desire to be chief and actively supports you in taking this role. She will understand, Caitlin. Will she? While we shared a biological mother, Illyria had been Sarah's mother since the day they brought us to Lewis from Clava. I was the only child raised by Freya, our biological mother. Our biological father, Luca, died many years before we were born. Friends of my parents had adopted all of our siblings, but Sarah and I had grown up knowing we were full sisters, just raised in adjoining households. Knowing that Illyria would be an active grandparent to my children would hurt Seraphine, especially as she and Matt were so far away and Illy wasn't so active in Ray's life. Caitlin, she would never begrudge you anything. You know that. Besides, you are having twins and you are the chief. She will understand. She is my daughter too. I would never do anything to upset her. That made me feel slightly better. The last thing I wanted to do was damage my relationship with my sister. It surprised me how much I had enjoyed being chief and working with Illy, knowing that decisions we made together benefited people's lives, sharing technologies and strategies, but most of all, we got along. She valued my input and didn't demean my ideas, especially when I saw things from a different perspective. Illy was an expert in managing people, motives, and soft diplomacy. I often saw things from a technical viewpoint. We discussed issues as colleagues, not the mother and child we once were. We laughed and enjoyed our time working, despite the age gap and all those times she had punished me as a child. Our relationship had evolved into something new, and I looked forward to going to work each day. She was one of the few people who knew me and understood the insecurities I let no one see. Before every crucial decision, an underlying fear crippled me that I would let people down, that I wasn't making the right decisions, or I was missing a vital piece of information before enacting a resolution. She also knew what it was like to be pregnant with twins, to feel huge and unattractive. She forced me to rest, take time off, and place my relationship first. As I grew larger, she took over the long days, rescheduling meetings for the mornings and letting me attend essential meetings only. As much as I appreciated it, ultimately, it left me feeling guilty, knowing that she was carrying the burden. Nippy, formerly my assistant, had partially and unofficially taken over the role of Canadian ambassador since I had accepted more responsibility. But despite my insistence that she accept the role and title, she refused, claiming that she couldn't fill my shoes. Her work was invaluable, doing much of the legwork, attending meetings with the teams here, and collecting opinions and feedback on proposals and plans. But she stopped short of making decisions. Repeatedly, I begged her to take it all on, but she insisted I continue to function as the ambassador in an official capacity. For many tasks, I could do both. Still, I often felt overwhelmed with the competing priorities, especially as what might be good for the collective may not be best for the Canadian community. Then there was the sheer volume of work. How was I going to get these projects finished before the babies arrived? Not having an official Canadian ambassador also meant that I wasn't able to move to France or anywhere else in a hurry. In coming here, Gio had supported me. While we had decided to relocate based on my work, I desperately wanted him to have his turn and follow his dreams. I made a mental note to convince Nippy again or try to find someone to step up. There simply weren't enough hours in the day, and I panicked at the thought of all the work I needed to finish before the babies came.